so much. Meantime, again, John, the top commander in Afghanistan saying that he does expect it to be a tough year ahead.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who are saying that the United States is going to have it tough in Afghanistan. Remember that Newsweek magazine cover that called it Obama's Vietnam. And as well, there are people who are saying that the situation in Iraq is going to continue to be tough. Noted Pentagon correspondent Tom Ricks is the author of a new book called The Gamble, and he joins us now this morning from Washington. Tom, it's good to see you. Let me ask you, first of all, on this issue of troops to Afghanistan, 17,000, David McKiernan saying he wants to have them there for 5 years, getting some pushback now from the Secretary, Mr. Gates. And McKiernan wanted 10,000 more troops. Is this surge, I guess, in Afghanistan going to be enough?
No one knows because we don't have a strategy yet. But I think what you're seeing is the U.S. military telling the new president this thing is going to take longer than you think, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. I think they think that Obama's promise to get combat troops out of Iraq is not a departure from President Bush, but simply follows in the failed footsteps of being over-optimistic about how quickly you can get things done in either war.
You suggested in your new book, Tom, that the president is going to be torn between what his supporters expect and what his generals advise. And how do you think that is going to affect the situation on the ground, both in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, I think a lot of people voted for Obama thinking he was going to get all U.S. forces out of Iraq. And that simply is not going to happen anytime soon. In fact, the conclusion of my book is that we may be only halfway through this war. In fact, the last line of the book quotes Ambassador Crocker, our top diplomat in Iraq, saying that the events for which the Iraq war will be remembered have not yet happened.
You also predict that President Obama's first year in Iraq is going to be tougher than President Bush's last year in Iraq. Why do you believe it'll be tougher?
Well, there are a lot of signs of that. This is something I picked up on my last trip in Baghdad. We're trying to cut troop levels there. At the same time, we're trying to hold elections in Iraq, 3 rounds this year, which are destabilizing. And really, the surge failed. Its purpose was to lead to a political breakthrough. It improved security, but it didn't achieve that larger purpose. And because of that, none of the basic questions in Iraq have been addressed, have been solved. How do you share oil revenue? What's the relationship between the major groups? Is it going to be a strong central government or a loose confederation? None of these issues have been figured out yet.
Let me come back to that issue of elections. You said 3 rounds of elections planned for this year. The first was conducted at the end of January. That one seemed to go pretty smoothly.
Yeah, well, so did the Purple Finger election a couple of years ago. What followed that 6 months later? A small civil war. There's still people who predict that Iraq's going to have a civil war, that all the surge did was kick the can down the road a couple of years. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. But we do know that none of the basic questions facing Iraq have been solved. And the fewer American troops you have there, the less influence you have. Also this year, if you do pull down American troops, the more you take out, the riskier it becomes. The more you take out, you pull out of the more secure areas where you trust Iraqi forces more. But at the end of this year, General Odierno says in my book, you're going to start getting to the riskier, dangerous ones where they really aren't comfortable. And I think that's another point of friction you'll see between Obama and his generals.
You know, Barbara Starr just a moment ago was talking about the friction between General McKiernan in Afghanistan and Secretary Gates. We know that General Odierno has said in terms of the 16-month timetable for pulling out troops that the president would like to follow, well, we might be able to get 3 brigades out within 6 months. Won't be until the end of the year until we know whether we can have significant drawdowns. And we all remember back to last summer and that meeting that then candidate Obama had with General David Petraeus, who's now the CENTCOM commander in charge of both Iraq and Afghanistan. You write about that in your book, and you say it was a contentious meeting.
You know, it's funny because they're surprisingly similar guys. They're lean, smart, ambitious, a little bit more cooler, remote, cerebral than a lot of their peers. And they basically agree on Iraq. But it was a surprisingly contentious meeting, as you say, because Petraeus felt that at congressional hearings, Obama hadn't really heard him out. And so when Obama was in Baghdad on Petraeus' turf, Petraeus basically lectured him for 90 minutes on the nature of Iraq.
Wow. So it was sort of, let me sit you down and tell me what the situation here is, Senator?
Yeah. Rather than having a calm, quiet conversation, it was here are the facts of the case, and you're going to sit down and hear them.
Interesting dynamic that we may see manifesting itself as we go forward. Tom Ricks, it's great to see you this morning. Congratulations on the new book. It's called The Gamble, by the way.
Thank you.
Tom, thanks.
Well, the search for the man